It's time now for episode 81 of the Press Box podcast. Today, our guest is Steve Dunn. Steve is the head baseball coach at Alcoa High School. Steve is a friend of the Press Box podcast. We've had him on previously to talk about his career. Today, we're going to talk about the Alcoa high school baseball season. We're also going to talk a little bit about some of the challenges that he and many other high school coaches had to deal with last year during the COVID-19 pandemic. We'll talk a little bit about that. We'll also talk about some of the prospects for Alcoa High School baseball as they go into next season, as they begin to prepare for next season. And then, as many of you know, Steve was a former professional baseball player with the Minnesota Twins organization. So we'll talk to him a little bit about baseball, how it's played today, as opposed to how it was played maybe 25, 30 years ago, and even further back than that. Steve has some great insights to that as he played the game at a very high level. Talk to him about different types of managers, who makes decisions today in baseball. So we've got a lot planned for you today as we talk to Steve Dunn on the Press Box podcast. Okay, welcome back to the Press Box podcast. Hi, I'm your co-host, Ralph Miranda. My other co-host, Joseph Miranda, is out of pocket right now. So I'll be flying solo today, but it'll be an easy mission because our guest is going to be Steve Dunn. Steve is the head baseball coach at Alcoa High School. And we've had Steve on before. He's a friend of the podcast. And a friend of our family. We certainly appreciate him taking the time to join us. And Steve, how's things going?
Things are going great. We finished up our baseball season, heading into the summer, and like everything, it's a 365-day-a-year sport. So
yes, it is.
We've already started working towards next year.
Yes, it is. Yeah. Hey, but I remember the days when you finished baseball, you went right into football, then you went into basketball. But today, lots of specialization, right?
Yeah, it's funny. I remember telling my wife when I took the job, I said, if this ever comes a 365-day-a-year job, I don't think I want to do it because I enjoy my time off so much. And here I am. It's 365-day-a-year job, and I'm still doing it. But, if you're going to compete, you got to do it.
Well, that's right, and you probably wouldn't do it if you didn't love it. So that's probably a big part of it. Yeah. That's
true.
So tell us a little bit about your most recently completed season. How did it go? Where'd you guys end up? How far did you get?
It went real well. We ended up 25, 12-1.
Okay.
We won our district. We ended up losing in the region to Gibbs High School, and Gibbs High School went on to win the state championship. So we lost to a very good team. We had a few opportunities to hang in there and beat them, but we didn't. And I had thought from the beginning of the year, since we played them earlier, that they were probably the best team in 2A, and they proved that. And they obviously had a great year. So shout out to Jeff Davis and Gibbs and those guys. But we had a really good year, probably a little better than I expected.
Okay.
Our seniors did a really good job. We won 25 games, which in high school, our goal is if you can get to 20-win season, that's pretty good. And
right.
So we've had a good little run here for a few years, and hopefully we can rebuild and play well again next year.
Did you have a lot of seniors this year, or were you a young team?
No, we had 5 seniors this year, and so we graduated 5, and we still played with a lot of youth, but 4 of those 5 seniors started, so we'll replace them and move forward. But it's like anything else with high school baseball. You kind of see the talent you get in and try to develop it and do the best you can with it, and go out there and compete.
Well, in all deference to Coach Rankin and whoever the basketball coach is at Alcoa, I don't know who that is right now, but I think coaching baseball at Alcoa or any high school is really the most difficult coaching job. And the reason I say that is, if you look at Alcoa football, when they play at Gibbs, again, no offense to them, or, maybe a Pigeon Forge, they're pretty much going to win. All right. I mean, it's pretty much no question. But in baseball, it really doesn't matter. I mean, a pitcher can get hot one day, a couple guys can get hot at the plate. I mean, no matter who you play, there's always the chance to lose, right?
Right. In baseball, there's so much parity in East Tennessee. There's a lot of really good baseball teams. I mean, if you just go across the state of Tennessee and look at how many teams have an opportunity to get to a state tournament and compete for a state title, you're probably talking in any given year. Of course, I'm a 2A guy. You probably have 15 teams or so that have a chance to really, good chance to get to state and maybe win.
Right.
Whereas in football, that number might be, I don't know, 4 or 5, maybe.
Right.
So there's just a lot more parity. Football's obviously more of a physical game, and you can really out-talent people
right.
Very quickly. Baseball's a lot about matchups and so on and so forth. And I try to explain to people that baseball is really the only game that you can't put your best team on the field every day. And, with the way pitching works and everything else. So it's just, it's to me, of course, I'm a little biased. It's a complete team game, and you've got to have a complete team and depth to be able to win at a really high level and get a long way in tournaments and things where you just can't ride, one quarterback or one point guard or whatever. You got to have a really complete kind of team to do it. And, it's my wife and I talk about this all the time. It's tough to win in baseball. It's just a tough sport to win in at every level. I mean, look at SEC baseball right now at how good those kids are and how tough that league is. And I mean, from top to bottom, it's just a highly competitive sport, and it's trickled down obviously into high school baseball. There's a lot of really good baseball teams in Tennessee.
What I know you said you had 5 seniors this year. What if you had to put your finger on, what were your strengths? Were you a good pitching team? Were you a good offensive team? Was it kind of a balanced approach, or what were some of the things that you guys did exceptionally well this year?
Well, I think, in baseball, in order to win championships, you win championships with pitching and defense.
Right.
Hitting can win you games, but it can't necessarily win you championships. And I thought we were fairly balanced. We didn't have anyone that was, we're a program that we don't have a lot of Division I guys, and we try to really maximize the talent that we have. But I thought our strength was we had a few pitchers that could really fill up the zone. They threw a lot of strikes. Mm-hmm. They made guys put balls in play. We could match up with teams pretty well on the offensive end. We hit the ball really well for most of the season, and that translated into 25 wins, which was really good for us. And so I thought overall we were balanced. We didn't have those really big guns that you need to really get far into a state tournament and things like that. When you get to that level at the state tournament level, you really need like Pigeon Forge has a guy that's already committed to UT. He was only a sophomore this year. You really need some of those really big guns, specifically on the mound, to be able to make those kind of runs. And so, we don't have that kind of talent. We just have really good high school baseball players that we try to develop and put a little toughness into, and hopefully, play the game the right way and find ways to win baseball games.
Yeah. That's all you can do. Let's talk a little bit. I know this is a topic that most everybody wants to forget, and hopefully we're starting to get a little bit past it. But last year was really a tough year for you guys. I mean, the pandemic hit at just the worst time for everything. Baseball was getting started at. I know some teams got to play some games, others didn't get to play any games. Talk to me a little bit about those first few weeks when you guys realized that, hey, our season might be slipping away.
Yeah, we were up in Sevier County. We were playing a cancer tournament up there at the beginning of the year. And, it's right at the start of the whole pandemic. Nobody really knew what was going on.
Right.
And I remember we got up there and we were playing Powell, and we got to the meeting at home plate before the game, and Powell their coach over there told me that their AD just called them and said that this is the last weekend they can play. And we were really surprised at that. And it kind of trickled down, and all of a sudden everyone was starting to cancel games, and nobody really knew what was going on and how to handle it and everything like that. And then the colleges, they stopped their season. So that same weekend, we're up there playing. UT shut it down. There were some college coaches up there doing recruiting. They had to leave. And then after that tournament was over, by that Monday, the whole thing was over. And, we had ended up playing 4 games in that tournament, but that was it for our season. And, that everyone was just, kind of dumbfounded, and nobody really knew what the whole virus was all about, or what was going on, or anything. And then the schools started shutting down after that.
Right.
And so it kind of snowballed pretty quick. And, it was just one of those things that happened. And, you just feel really, really bad for all your players, but obviously your seniors. And it was just a bad situation for everybody involved, and obviously unfortunate. Just one of those things that you're not prepared for, but you work through.
Right. What were, I mean, I don't want to drag up any old wounds, but what were the emotions like? I mean, like you just said, you went from playing in a tournament one weekend to, in effect, maybe just a week later, nothing. I mean, there was nothing going on. I mean,
it was really hard on our seniors. I mean, as a team, we were going to be really good. We were coming off a really, really good year for us, and we were going to be really good again. And the seniors had really worked hard, and I mean, you put in all this stuff,
right?
And they were upset about it, because for most of these kids, high school baseball is the end of the line. They're not going to play baseball anymore, and your senior year, for a lot of reasons, not just baseball, is such a fun time for being that age and going through that. And they took it hard. I mean, it was hard on everybody, not just our guys, but I just felt bad for everybody. I mean, Robbie Bennett over at Heritage had a really good team that year, and probably the best team he's ever had. And then that just got wiped out. And you're just kind of like, oh my gosh, but what can you do?
Right. I mean, there's nothing you can do about it. That's right.
Baseball is baseball. It's not, even though I think it's life sometime, it's not, but it just it was what it was.
Well, the interesting, I mean, I know it's hard at the time, but now we're a year past that episode. And I think, your seniors from last year will grow from that, and I think they'll learn that it's hard, but they'll learn that, if that's the worst thing that happens to them in life, they're going to be okay.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. And I had, my daughter was a senior last year at Maryville High School, and she went through it, and, without the prom and all of that kind of stuff, and the graduation and all of that. So, we went through it with her on a personal level, and then you add the sports into it. But yeah, we're a year removed from it. And, hopefully everybody's kind of rebounded, but, it's one of those things you look back on, and, you just don't have those memories from your senior year. And,
right.
But I guess if that's the worst thing that happens to you in life, you're doing probably pretty well. So
no, you are, but you just hit on it really, really succinctly there, is that, it's hard for anybody who hasn't been through it to realize what a senior year means to a senior, especially that second part of it. I mean, you touched on the prom, you touched on whether it's baseball, whatever it is, when that's just taken away from you and you don't have a chance to make it up, it's really hard on a young person,
It is hard, and it's especially hard, I think, for our athletes, because they put in so much work.
Right, exactly.
And, they worked so hard to get where they were, and you put in all that time and energy, and then all that time and energy is just, you don't get a chance to see how it unfolds and if it pays off and that sort of thing. And, it was just one of those things that obviously no one had ever been through.
Right, exactly.
I'm a coach, and I can come back next year, which I obviously did. and baseball is still a part of my life. But for them, a lot of those kids, that was it.
Yeah.
So
yeah. That's tough. That's tough.
Yeah.
Well, that is tough. I mean, I don't really know what else to say about it, but let's move on. I want to talk a little bit about baseball in general. You're obviously a former player, and I'm going to go out on a limb and say that you're old school enough where you remember the days when there was hit and run, there was moving guys over, there was hitting behind runners, there was hitting it to the gap, and striking out was not really a good thing to do, and taking a walk was a good thing to do sometimes. Today, the game has changed. You go out there and you watch baseball on TV, and it's like, you got guys hitting 40 home runs and striking out 125 times.
Right.
What are your thoughts about the game of baseball, having been so close to it as you were?
Well, it's funny because I had stopped playing in '96, and the game today is completely different than the game I left.
Yeah.
I remember when I played, if you were a Major League Baseball player and you hit 25, 30 home runs, that was something. Obviously hitting 300, driving in 100 runs, those type of things.
Right.
But the game is completely shifted. It's a completely different game. and I would say, even on the high school level, it's gotten to be a different game. And I think a lot of that honestly has to do with strength and nutrition. It has to do with science. It has to do with the data, all the analytics. It's such a scientific thing now. But the strength and the conditioning, the things that we do now at a high school program for how we develop arms and how we develop bat speed and how we develop athletes and how we develop our strength. I mean, it is just night and day from what even in high school. Heck, Ralph, when I was in high school, I was training myself.
Right.
When I was a professional baseball player in the off season, I was training myself.
Right.
We didn't have all this, the strength and nutrition and the things that they have now, let alone all the data, all the scientific research that goes into it, the camera, that can look at swing path and arms. I mean, we do the drive line program now at high school and all these things. And if you look at Major League Baseball players now, not that they weren't before, but I mean, these guys are so strong,
right,
so big. The pitchers are throwing stuff that, when I was playing, if a guy was throwing 92 miles an hour, let alone 94, I mean, you hardly saw that.
Really?
Now guys are, I mean, I'm sitting there watching the SEC tournament the other day, and everyone's throwing 94. And some guys are throwing 98, and the balls are moving so much. And so you have these athletes that are so well trained and so strong, from pitchers and defensive players, and the whole thing is just completely shifted the way the game is played. So, when you're getting paid $30 million a year to hit 40 home runs and drive in 100. Nobody really cares if you strike out that 150 times, heck, 180 times now.
Yeah.
So it's a completely different game. I don't know if they're going to be able to do anything with it, because the pitchers are so ridiculously good now too. And the stuff that they're throwing is so, I sit there and watch it because I watch baseball all the time. I'm like, I don't know how anybody hits it. I mean, you see what these guys are throwing now. So it's completely different. And it's completely changed the game.
Well, I understand what you're saying, and I never really thought of it that way. That's an interesting take, but isn't it kind of a double-edged sword? In other words, I remember when I was young, and I'm going way back now. Baseball players, as you said, there wasn't the same strength and conditioning. Some of them you'd catch smoking in the dugout, which is not a good thing, but you saw it. Your pitchers pitched complete games. Some of them had 35 starts, 40 starts.
Yep.
Today, you're seeing a lot of guys miss time with oblique injuries and calf injuries and this injury. A lot of pitchers, it's very rare today. It seems like every other day you hear of a pitcher having Tommy John surgery. So maybe all those things that you mentioned are good for the game from the standpoint of what it's producing, but I think it's also causing some problems as well, is it not?
Oh, for sure. I mean, I'm a strength and conditioning guy. I like physical athletes. I like watching guys that play, but like with Carlos Stanton from, New York. I mean, that
Right.
guy's hurt all the time.
All the time.
Or Aaron Judge or
Right.
whoever it may be. These guys are always tweaking things. So I was actually watching the MLB Network the other day, and they were talking about that fine line between skill work and strength and conditioning. And maybe the strength and conditioning is to a point where guys are so strong, but they're not able to play, 162 games.
Right.
What are you getting out of that athlete for that amount of time, and so on and so forth. So yeah, it certainly is a double-edged sword. I was always a fundamentals of the game guy.
Right.
We do that at the high school level because we're obviously not them. But it's nobody bunts now. My wife gets so upset because she doesn't understand why people won't beat the shift.
Yeah. Yeah.
Why they hit right into the shift all the time and don't make adjustments. And it's because you don't get paid to keep the ball in the park anymore, I guess. It's just it is weird. I mean, I love baseball. I'm always a baseball fan. It is a different game to watch, though. And these guys are just absolute freaks of nature when it comes to how they play baseball, but it is a different game for sure.
Well, I'm sure there's smarter people than me that are keeping track of numbers, but what you just mentioned there about what your wife said, I think it's right on. I mean, to me, if guys are shifting on you, you lay down a couple bunts or go the opposite way a few times, and I would think that they're going to think twice about shifting on you next time. Maybe they won't. I don't know. But today it just seems like you said, they don't care. They're just going to keep trying to lift the ball up out of the park. And yeah. I mean, I guess it's working from the standpoint of they're still getting paid and all that, but it just doesn't seem like logically it would make a whole lot of sense.
Yeah, it's interesting because even, when they do shift on you, they're going to pitch into the shift.
Correct.
But they're also pitching to your strength if that's where the shift is. So
correct.
I don't quite understand all that. If you're going to pitch a guy inside and that's his strength, why would you pitch a guy inside? So I don't know. Like I said, I don't know. It drives me insane because it looks so easy. And I know it's not, believe me, because I've done it, but you kind of look at where the shift is and you're like, that's a base hit every time.
Every time. Yeah.
And you just can't, I don't know. It's just,
not me, but I mean, if you made it your effort to go against a shift, you could probably hit 450, because if they're going to give it to you, take it.
And these guys are good enough where you think that they would have the bat control to be able to do that.
Exactly.
At least put pressure on that side and take the shift over. I don't know if Major League Baseball, I kind of like the idea of the shortstop has to be to the left of the base.
Right.
The second baseman has to be to the right of the base. Wherever that is, that's fine. But I don't know. The whole shift thing bothers me.
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't know. I'm an old school guy that way. I love watching Fernando Tatís play because of how phenomenal he is, but I just don't relate to how he plays.
Right.
Watching home runs and flipping bats, I don't relate to that really well. And I know a lot of people get flack for that. That's too old school. You don't understand the game, blah, blah, blah. I get all that. I really do. But it takes a little bit for me to kind of stay up with how the game is played today. And I'm pretty much a purist, and probably I'm a purist because I wasn't good enough not to be. So, I guess if I was as good as Fernando Tatís, maybe I'll do the same thing.
No, I understand what you're saying, and I think it's a symptom of a bigger problem. I mean, I think today we've got Twitter, we've got TikTok, we've got YouTube,
Right.
We've got Instagram. Right. Everybody wants to be in front of the media. Everybody wants. I mean, and that's part of the problem. When you and I were growing up, there was none of that.
Nope.
And back when you and I played a long time before you did in high school. And if you jumped around the bases and threw the bat and all, you were going to get beamed the next time you were up. There was just no question about that.
Just different. And it's done. They talk a lot about the unwritten rules now and how they're carried out, and these younger guys really don't understand and blah, blah, blah. I don't know. But, like when I was growing up, I grew up playing in the 80s, and I graduated high school in 88. But when I was growing up, when I was little, I was a Bucky Dent fan. And when I was a little bit older, I was a Don Mattingly fan.
Right.
And, I was lucky to see these guys play once a month on TV.
Right.
And so they kind of took on more of a mythical quality, and there was something about the way that you followed the game. And now everything is so out there and in there. And it's almost like, at least to me, it's, these guys are more into marketing themselves.
They are.
Than, I don't know. I know I sound, old, and that's okay. I just, I'm a Mickey Mantle guy, and
yes,
I just like the way the game used to be and the way it was talked about, and how, and it's just different. And that's not to say I'm not a fan, because obviously I am, but, even I try to, my kids, my Alcoa kids, high school kids, they don't know these players.
Right.
They don't know old school players. They know the big players because that's what they see. I mean, everybody knows Tatís, but they don't know who plays first base for, whoever.
Right.
And they don't know who's in what division. The game is just completely different in terms of how it's understood and how it's studied and knowing the history of it. Right. They don't care about that stuff.
No.
They don't watch the game. They play it. They just don't watch it.
Right.
And they certainly don't play it outside of practice and that kind of thing. Like we grew up playing wiffle ball and all these things. So, I'll keep my old school ways and try to adapt as best I can. But I think eventually it'll probably just bypass me, and I'll have to let some younger guy do what he needs to do.
I think you said it. Everything you just said, I think, is right on, and I'll tell you a funny story. I going along with what you said, I remember when I was young, I forget what year it was. I want to say 1972, 73. I remember getting up every morning and going right to the newspaper when Lou Brock set the stolen base record. Okay. And I would look to see how many stolen bases Lou Brock had the night before, because you just wanted to follow it that way. And today, like you said, the kids, they don't really care, they'll play it, but they don't really care,
No, we did, it's funny you mentioned that, because we did that, or I did that with Ricky Henderson.
Yeah.
The exact same thing. And a buddy of mine used to play a game involving Ricky Henderson, and we followed his, when he broke Lou Brock's record.
Right.
But they just, there's so many things that grab their attention. The way they play today, the way they go about their childhoods, and it's just a different than when I grew up. And I'm not saying it's better or worse. I think it's worse, but
yeah, I agree.
I get mad because half of my kids can't even throw a ball up and hit it straight.
Yeah.
And for the life of me, I can't figure that out. So
yeah.
I get, and they're good athletes. Don't get me wrong. They're strong and they're really good athletes. They just, the skill sets are a little bit behind, but they overcome that, I guess, with strength and athletic ability. And, that's just the evolution of the game, I guess.
Well, let's pyramid off that and talk something that may be causing what I'm about to say. You obviously, there's been I think 7 no-hitters already this year, something like that, 8, maybe 8. It used to be when I was growing up, let's talk old school again, a no-hitter was rare.
Right.
It wasn't thrown in a perfect game, forget it. I think there's only been 25 of those in history. But why do you think there's so many no-hitters now? Do you think that the pitchers are that much better? Or do you think that this new way of hitting and approaching offense is causing this?
I think they're that much better.
Yeah.
I hate to say this because it's almost sacrilegious, but you put Ted Williams in the box today with the skills that he had in 1950, and he ain't hitting what he hit. He's not dealing with 98 miles an hour that's moving 6 inches and dealing with guys that coming in, and guys are seeing pitchers maybe twice, and then the way they use relievers now, so you might see 3 pitchers and 4 at bats, and their velocity is just so much higher, their movement so much higher, their spin rate is so much higher, that the velocity is not only so much better, the movement. That's what what gets me, is how much they can make the ball move at those velocities.
Right.
So, I'm watching Derek Cole pitch or, whoever, and he's throwing 98 and then he's throwing his changeup at 89.
Mm-hmm.
And 89 used to be a fastball, and they're throwing these power sinkers, and
Right.
it's just the movement. And then they're throwing so hard and they rarely center up the plate. It's just, it's just incredible to me, the velocity and movement that today's pitcher brings to the table.
Yeah.
And everybody's got it. That's the thing. Everybody comes in throwing 94 now.
Right.
So I think it's just the pitchers are so good, and we've gone away from that Tony Gwynn type style hitter. Lou Brock, any of those guys, Don Manley, my hero growing up. It's not about contact. It's not about squaring up the ball. And another thing is going up the middle. I mean, going up the middle used to be the thing that you did.
Right.
To keep the shoulder in. But now going up the middle hurts you because you hit right over the end of the shift.
Right.
And so all those base hits are gobbled up the middle. And it's just a very different beast. And I don't know how Major League Baseball is going to deal with it, or if there's anything they can do to deal with it. And I'm not taking away anybody that throws a no-hitter.
Right.
I know how hard that is. It's just not the same.
Right.
It used to be what, quote unquote, a big deal.
Right.
And now maybe it's just a deal.
Right.
And just take out the big.
Yeah, that's interesting. I mean, I agree with what you're saying. I think, though, that some of the things we talked about of the hitting philosophy today is maybe making these pitchers even better. Because, I mean, if you're trying to constantly lift the ball and you got a guy throwing 96, 97,
Sure.
and how are you going to be able to do that? Whereas maybe if you're saying, okay, I'm going to try to lift it my first time, but this guy's really on tonight, I'm going to try to, like you said, go up the middle, go opposite field, something like that,
Well, part of the problem too, I think, Ralph, is they're throwing so hard and they throw up in the zone. And as a hitter, the ball up in the zone is a ball you see.
Right.
It's not a ball you should swing at, but it's a ball you see really well. And so when you're throwing that ball that's up in the zone at 97, there's holes up there. Nobody can handle that.
Right.
And so they're just getting beat at the top of the zone, and there's holes in swings, obviously.
Right. Yeah.
I mean, there's a lot more holes. And, it's, you take all of that approach, and you go with the launch angle, and now you're creating maybe another hole. And they're just easily exploited. But then you see guys, if they make contact, the home runs are obviously way up. So
yeah.
Obviously, so are strikeouts. So, we're in a strikeout era because the pitchers are so powerful. And now you got holes in swings, and it's just going to stand to reason that things are going to go up.
Yeah.
And why the heck they don't go against the shift sometimes, I'll never understand it. But I'm not in the clubhouse making those decisions. Maybe the general manager doesn't want them to do it. I don't know. But I don't know. It's just different.
Well, I'm glad you mentioned general manager, because that'll help me pyramid onto our next topic. Managers, baseball managers. You played in an era when the Jim Lelands of the world were still out there. The Sparky Anderson, he might have been at the end of his career. Buck Showalter. You name it. Okay. Today, not taking.
I played for one. Yeah.
Did you? Which one did you play for?
Tom Kelly.
Yeah, there you go. Tom Kelly.
As old school as you can get.
Exactly. Yeah, you could name probably 3 or 4 more.
Yeah.
And today, not to take away from these guys, but you got David Ross managing the Cubs. Aaron Boone managing the Yankees. I think Brad Ausmus managed a couple teams. You got all these guys that maybe they were probably good players, but they don't really understand managing, in my opinion. And the reason I say that is you mentioned general managers. I think the general managers are the ones doing the managing these days. For sure.
I'm sure you probably read it or watched the movie, but if you have ever seen Moneyball,
yes,
and the analytics of the game, I mean, I'm a big Terry Francona fan, and I read his book, and he talked about his interview when he went to Boston. And it was all based on analytics and how he would handle certain things in certain situations. And basically, GMs are making decisions, or somebody's making decisions about how to manage games based
Right.
on numbers.
Right.
And so I don't know. I guess maybe these younger guys, or these are really good player managers. They can handle maybe the way the nuance of the game has changed, and
They're babysitters.
And because even in high school, Ralph, it's really tough to be tough on kids. It's really tough to be a hard-nosed, tough coach, to make your kids tougher and to make them better human beings and to make them better young men. It's not a day and age where you can, I don't know how to say it in a politically correct way, but it's just so many of our young men, at least in my personal opinion, they're just not being taught how to be good, solid, tough young men.
I agree.
Of good standing character. And, there's no parents baby their kids too much.
I agree.
And they don't allow them to fail. And they don't allow them to go through struggle. And they don't allow them to see things from different perspectives. It's all about the kid. And, that's a tough thing. It's a tough thing for coaches, not just in baseball, but all across high school sports. And I'm sure even into college, they're tired of it. They're tired of, of these kind of battles, but it's just a different athlete, at least at our level. And, that old school, tough character, integrity driven coach that's trying to instill these really good values by coaching kids really hard.
Mm-hmm.
That's not there.
Yeah, no,
it's tough to do. It's a different kid.
Yeah, you hit it right at the head. I mean, I think that's the issue. And I think, and those kids have grown up now and are becoming major leaguers. And it's the same concept. Look at, I don't want to get into this, but you look at the Tony La Russa thing in Chicago. Here's a guy that's an old school guy. They can't relate to him. They don't like him, because he's trying to manage the way he did 35 years ago,
Yeah.
And you can't.
Old school baseball guys are pig-headed for sure. I mean, they think there's a way the game should be played. I tend to agree with them. Now, that's not the way that it's not as entertaining, but it's just old school baseball. But I like old school baseball.
Right.
And the game has obviously changed in that regard. And, the kids that, we dealt with it this year, we got kids that hit home runs and think it's okay to flip a bat and to walk to first base. And I can't, the disconnect there is, but that's what they see.
Right.
And it's hard to get them to see that that's not the way you should play the game when they see that's the way the game's being played. And you're making me sound like I'm an old fogey out here trying to coach high school kids.
No, I'm not. You're not sounding like that at all. You're realistic, and I think there's probably not a high school coach that would be in your age range that would disagree with you at all. You know what I mean?
I don't think so. I really don't.
I mean,
a lot of younger ones come out now, but
yes,
us guys with gray hair tend to think a little bit alike, especially if they're a baseball guy. If they've grown up in the game and they kind of get it. So
they do. They do. Yeah, they do. Well, Steve, gosh, we could probably talk forever about baseball. I know it's just so many things to talk about, but I know your time is valuable. So you're getting a chance to relax a little bit now. And you guys, when do you start working out again? I'm sure some of the guys are lifting and doing stuff like that, but when will you start organized activities again?
Well, right now we got most of our kids are in the summer ball program.
Okay.
They're with their summer league teams. I'll do something, once or twice a week with some of our kids on a more individual basis. When we get back to school in late July, we will then start up our next cycle for our throwing program, our open facilities, all that kind of thing. And then when it gets too cold, we'll really cycle into more of the power side and that sort of thing. So it just kind of keeps moving forward. And, you're always finding ways to get better. And these athletes today it's really hard being a two-sport athlete now in high school because of fans that now, if you want to compete, you got to put in the work.
Right.
And if you're not putting in that work, you're going to obviously be behind everybody else. So right now you got to do it to keep the playing field level. And that's not the way it used to be. You could go in and play basketball or football and come into baseball, but everybody was doing that.
Right.
But now, it's pretty much a 365 cycle, and there are a few dead periods in there, and we'll take about a 6 to 8 week time off from actually throwing just to rest our arms, but that doesn't mean we're not hitting and doing other things. So, yeah, we like everybody else, just keep grinding it out and trying to develop kids, and whoever comes out there to play in the spring, I'll coach them up, and we'll see if we can get them better and keep doing good things.
That's all you can do. And Steve Dunn, head baseball coach at Alcoa High School. Alcoa Baseball has a Twitter account. It's Alcoa HS Baseball. That's their Twitter account. Go there and check that out. And I'm telling you from personal experience, I've known Steve for many years. You won't find a better man and a better coach than Steve Dunn at Alcoa High School. Steve, thank you so much for your time. I could talk to you for hours about baseball.
Yeah, Ralph, thank you. And I really appreciate the compliments. And please tell your son hello for me. And I hope your family's doing well. And if there's anything you ever need from me, just holler. But I enjoy talking to you, man. Thank you so much.
Well, likewise, if I can do anything for you, just yell at me. And I enjoy talking to you as well. You take care.
I will, man. Thank you so much, man. Have a good one.
You too.
See you, buddy.
See you.